Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to rise in this House today and speak on behalf of the constituents of the Great Kenora riding, and particularly with respect to Bill C-391, outside of the serious impact of the global recession and the work that we've needed to do out there. I don't think there's a single bigger issue than dismantling this long gun registry. I heard it at thousands of doorsteps of constituents throughout my riding as I have canvassed and campaigned, and I'm here today to take my 10 minutes to speak on behalf of the majority of constituents in my riding who want to see the long gun registry dismantled. And I applaud my colleague and neighbor, so to speak, out there in Ontario for the work that she's done, and of course and the work of a couple of key MPs in these regards. I want to start talking today about this whole idea of gun-related crime. And I want to point out, Mr. Speaker, that this is one that this government has taken very seriously. Our government has been committed to making our streets and communities safer for all Canadians since we were first elected in 2006. In fact, since we took office, we followed up on a real commitment to reduce gun-related crimes with concrete and tangible initiatives to get tough with criminals. Our government has stood up for average Canadians time and time again. In the face of never-ending opposition to our tough-on-crime legislative agenda by the obstructionist Liberal-dominated Senate. Despite the opposition in the Senate, Mr. Speaker, this government introduced and passed the Tackling Violent Crime Act. It contains tough measures to battle gun-related crime. There are now mandatory prison sentences for criminals who commit crimes with guns. Tougher bail rules to make it easier to keep people accused of serious gun crimes off our streets, and provisions that make it easier to keep the country's most dangerous, violent, repeat offenders behind bars where they belong. Our government is committed to continuing this work, to get tough on crime, Mr. Speaker. We have before this House many other pieces of legislation to keep law-abiding Canadians safe from those who chose not to live within the bounds of the law in our civil society. One of them is a bill that would change the so-called faint hope clause, which gives some people convicted of serious crimes a chance at early parole. If passed, this will close the revolving door that allows convicted criminals back out on our streets after serving as little as a Liberal 1/6, we call it over here. And we will continue bringing legislation forward that focuses on the protection of honest, hard-working Canadians. As our Prime Minister has stated, our government's approach to criminal justice is fundamentally different than our predecessors. We believe that the central purpose of a criminal justice system is not the welfare of the criminal, it is the protection of law-abiding citizens and their families. Canadians across this country hear media reports on a crime that is committed with guns on an almost daily basis. This concerns not just Canadians who live in large urban centres. We do from time to time see gun violence in smaller towns and cities as well. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, almost all of these acts of violence were committed with handguns. Our government has always contended that the long gun registry could be misused and that information contained in it could be compromised to the detriment of law-abiding gun owners across this country. As the member from Timmins, James Bay, has said, quote, "I would say that the people in my riding are very responsible gun owners. They've had a lot of resentment about how the registry was implemented, and a lot of that resentment has been well-founded," unquote. The constituents of the Great Kenora riding share those concerns. We saw the extent to which the long gun registry could be misused a couple of weeks ago when it was widely reported that the information contained in the registry was handed over to a private polling company. Constituents were called in my riding without any consultation in any regard to the privacy concerns or interests of the information contained in the registry records. I can think of no greater example to point to for the justification of abolishing the unfair, burdensome, an unnecessary, costly long gun registry.
Right.
And that, Mr. Speaker, is really what the bill before us today is all about. It's about making sure that we continue to preserve and enhance those measures which do work to reduce crime and protect Canadians. But it's also about making sure that we don't unnecessarily penalize hard-working, honest, law-abiding citizens with rules that have little effect on crime prevention or reducing gun crime. What then does Bill C-391 do? Let me be clear. First and foremost, the legislation before us today removes the need to register non-restricted firearms such as rifles and shotguns that are not otherwise prohibited. Today, such non-restricted firearms are primarily used, of course, by our First Nations communities. In my riding, more than 320,000 sparkling square kilometers of great hunting terrain for tradition and recreation. Some farmers, not so many in my riding, and sports hunters and people who enjoy rifling, such as myself, folks that want to protect their livestock or, of course, hunt wild game, they are rarely used to commit crimes, Mr. Speaker. We know that is the case thanks to a recent study published, for example, in the Journal of Criminology and Criminal Justice, which noted that most of the guns that are used to commit crimes in Canada are handguns smuggled in from the United States. That said, Bill C-391 did not do away with the need to properly license non-restricted firearm owners, nor does it do away with the need for the owners of other types of weapons to obtain a registration certificate, as well as a license. Registration of restricted and prohibited firearms, including all handguns and automatic firearms, would continue to be maintained by the RCMP Canadian Firearms Programs. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, and I can assure my colleagues and Canadians, that farmers, duck hunters, target shooters, and other law-abiding citizens under Bill C-391 will still need to go through a licensing procedure. To obtain a license, they must be able to pass the required Canadian firearms safety course. It is a rigorous course. I've taken it, and it's an important reminder to me of the concerns you have to have for the safe handling and storage of firearms. They'll also need to pass a background check performed by the Chief Firearms Officer or representatives who employ law enforcement systems and resources to ensure that the individuals in question have not committed serious criminal offenses in the recent past, is not under a court-sanctioned prohibition order for firearms, and does not pose a threat to public safety. So, Mr. Speaker, Bill C-391 retains licensing requirements for all gun owners, while doing away with the need for honest and law-abiding citizens to undergo the burden of registering their non-restricted rifles or shotguns, a burden which has no impact on reducing gun crimes in Canada. Over the last 3 years, Mr. Speaker, the Government of Canada has passed legislation to tackle violent crime and violent gun crime, as I alluded to earlier, introducing mandatory prison sentences for gun crimes, as well as reverse bail provisions for serious offense, where a lot of changes were long overdue. We've provided more money to the provinces and territories so that they could hire additional police officers. The government has committed to helping the RCMP recruit and train more personnel. Our government has taken action to help young people make smart choices and avoid becoming involved in gang activities through programs funded through the National Crime Prevention Centre. Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure that we have a system to screen prospective gun owners that is effective and efficient. And that's why this government has invested $7 million annually to strengthen the front-end screening of first-time firearm license applicants, with a view to keeping firearms out of the hands of people who should not have them. We have to ensure that we have a mechanism in place to keep firearms out of the hands of those who threaten our community, our safety, and our lives. Mr. Speaker, as I wind up this speech, I just want to urge all honourable members to review the real facts, to listen to Canadians from the Great Kenora riding and many other ridings that are large size and have predominantly remote and isolated rural communities, Mr. Speaker, and to respect our way of life and to support the vast majority of people who believe that this long gun registry unfairly penalizes law-abiding citizens who live in our ridings. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, I'm confident that members will approach today's debate with an open mind, and when the time comes, we'll vote accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.